Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about human rights and government policy. Anime Paul wants Canada to be the world leader it's supposed to be. She wants to see climate change goals met. She wants to see diplomacy acts met and see Canada helping people that need the help, doing what Canada does best, help people and promote clean innovation and doing the things that we need to do to aid with climate change around the world. She is saying that as part of the Green Party platform, putting an end to fracking and digging for fossil fuels should be a priority that will help thousands and millions of people live better. These are the goals that she wants to put forth as her running for election with the Green Party. The question is, how does the rest of Canada feel about her goals, and do they see that by switching cold turkey to a green economy as being a benefit to all of Canada's citizens? Along with this, we have a roundtable meeting with Jagmeet Singh as he invites people from British Columbia to come talk to him about what he wants the NDP to do. And we've heard him talk about healthcare, we've heard him talk about climate change, we've heard him talk about the economy and bringing forth jobs. So let's listen to what both Jagmeet and Anime Paul have to say, as we also listen to what the mayors of Canada are expecting from their federal partners. What do municipalities need from the federal government so that we all can live better?
Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We're in Norman Jewison Park here in Toronto Centre. A lot of construction going on around us. Nous sommes ici aujourd'hui pour parler de l'Afghanistan et le rôle du Canada au monde. We're here today to speak about Afghanistan and Canada's role in the world. First, regarding Afghanistan, it's no secret, and I've been speaking about this quite a lot, the Green Party is extremely disappointed by Mr. Trudeau and his Liberal colleagues and their response. Despite what they have been saying, there is no doubt that we knew enough to know that we needed to respond faster than we did, and because of what we did not do, that many Canadian citizens and their families and Afghan support staff that could otherwise have gotten out of the country are now trapped in the country with advice from our own global affairs that they should hide in place, seek a safe hiding place until we can figure out a plan. Anyone who has ever experienced a moment of physical insecurity can only imagine what our Canadian citizens who are trapped in Afghanistan must be feeling like today and yesterday and tomorrow, with no prospects of being rescued anytime soon. And for those of us who have friends and colleagues and people that we care about in Afghanistan, please understand that this is not over, that the terror is real, that the concern about whether our colleagues, our friends, our family will see the light of day is real. And so this is a moment where where Mr. Trudeau and his ministers, instead of being out on the campaign trail, should be doing what people in Canada should be expecting them to do, which is coming up with a credible plan about how we can get those thousands of citizens and Afghan support staff who supported us out from Afghanistan. Immediately after this press conference, I will be joining Canadian Campaign for Afghan Peace in their vigil. They are asking and pleading with us not to forget, not to forget. Please don't forget. Please remember that these are our neighbors. These are our friends. These are Canadians who need a rescue plan. And please don't forget those who fought with us, who served with us, who helped us, who protected us, who saved Canadian lives, and who, because of the inaction of the government of the day, are now left trapped and need our help. And alors, il faut faire notre mieux de sauver nos citoyens et citoyennes. Il faut faire notre mieux d'assurer que toutes les personnes qui ont protégé, servi avec les membres de notre corps militaire, les membres de notre corps diplomatique soient sauvés. Il ne faut pas jamais oublier. On sait qu'on aurait fait mieux, on aurait à faire plus et on l'a pas fait. Et maintenant, c'est le moment d'insister sur un plan crédible, un plan efficace et rapide pour sauver nos Canadiens et Canadiennes qui restent là dans des circonstances énormément dangereuses en Afghanistan. And this really reminds us of Canada and its role and how our role in the world, how our global reputation has suffered tremendously over the last number of years. I'm a former diplomat. I've worked at the International Court. I've worked as a diplomat for our country. I've worked as a director in a leading conflict prevention organization focused on protecting civilians in deadly conflict. So trust me when I tell you that Canada and our reputation is suffering every single day that we leave people behind. And our reputation is suffering every time our international partners ask us for a certain kind of support and we don't show up. And this includes things like COVAX. We were asked by the World Health Organization to provide vaccines to that facility to help get low-income countries vaccinated. Our response was to take vaccines from COVAX. We were asked to join the growing global consensus that vaccine patents should be suspended so that low-income countries could catch up in vaccination. Our response? We don't know the response. Our government still has not committed to, the Liberal government rather, still has not committed to that. We were asked by the Uyghur to please help to draw international attention to the genocide that is being perpetrated and not to further legitimize the actions of the Chinese government by participating in the 2022 Olympics in Beijing. Our response? We still don't know the response. There has been no commitment to recognize that genocide, and there's been no commitment not to participate in those Olympics. And we have been asked for years, for decades, to do our fair share on the climate, to do our fair share to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to do our fair share to recognize that countries that had the least to do with creating this emergency are the ones who are being the most impacted by it. Our response for the last 6 years has been to increase greenhouse gas emissions, to remain one of the worst emitters per capita of greenhouse gas emissions in the world, and to continue to build pipelines, to green light oil and gas exploration projects, to frack gas, and to subsidize the fossil fuel sector. And so a country like ours is only as good as their word. And as a former diplomat, I say that our word has to be our bond, and people around the world must be able to count on it. Si on veut prendre une place de leadership global sur les enjeux les plus importants, il faut le mériter. Et on le mérite par reconnaître et respecter nos engagements. On voit dans le cas de COVAX, dans le cas des Uyghurs, dans le cas des vaccins, dans le cas du climat, on n'a pas fait. And so a green government will pursue a foreign policy that is centered on the promotion of human security, of respect for the rule of law, and respect for the rule of law by in its dealings with state and non-state actors. We will pursue a policy of respect for international law that is centered around demonstrating our commitment to it. We will pursue an international fair trade policy. This includes shifting away from free trade to fair trade and engaging with countries that are committed not to making a profit and not to having economic prosperity on the backs of the least fortunate. We will cease to support Canadian exporters of arms and fossil fuels, with the exception of those engagements related to our peacekeeping in the case of arms. And we will ensure that Canada reorients itself towards peacekeeping in a way that we promised to do so many years ago. And that our defense policy will be focused on the pursuit of disarmament, a focus on disaster relief, on protecting our Arctic as well, and respecting the Geneva Conventions. Alors, au centre de notre politique d'affaires internationales va être un respect pour le droit international, un respect pour l'échange, pas uniquement libre, mais un échange équitable avec les autres pays, d'arrêter de subventionner l'exportation des armes, l'exportation des produits pétroliers, de respecter l'importance les objectifs de développement durable, et aussi une politique de défense qui est ciblée sur la protection de notre Nord, sur un engagement avec les missions de paix et sur une préparation pour les désastres climatiques et autres qu'on voit en ce moment, et aussi l'abolition des armes nucléaires. Canada, under a green government and with more Greens in Parliament, will be one that signs and ratifies the treaty to abolish nuclear weapons, one that so many other countries have signed and Canada continues to hesitate to sign. In doing these things, we will assure that Canada has a voice at the table, that Canada is considered an honest broker, and more than anything, that when we give our word, we will keep it. For Canada, this is incredibly important. It's time to rebuild that trust, and it begins with this election. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. I believe we have there are no questions on the ground, so we will go straight to Zoom. Il n'y a pas de questions sur place, alors on va commencer avec les questions sur Zoom. We have David Thurton, who has a question. David, please go ahead. One question, one follow-up. Thank you.
Hi, Madam Paul. It's very good to see you today. Toronto's looking good.
Yes.
Nice. So I have two questions. Both are different. I'll just ask you this one first. I was just on Twitter and I saw that the Green Party of BC's former leader, Andrew Weaver, is basically endorsing the Liberal climate plan, calling it bold. I'm wondering what you think about this, and of all the climate plans that you've seen from the parties, the NDP, the Conservatives, and of course the Liberals, how credible do you think the Liberal plan is?
I can't speak to the tweet. I haven't seen it. I've been involved with meetings all day. What I will say is that there is one party in this instance, and David, you know our party well. When our party underlines a difference, we really mean it, and we do it reluctantly, and we also do it with the hope that it won't be a difference for very long. But when it comes to the climate, the differences could not be clearer, and voters in Canada have a very real and important choice to make as soon as possible about what direction we want to head in. The Liberal plan, by the admission and the recognition of the government, our own civil service. Even if we were to implement every single element of the Liberal plan, we would not even meet the more modest targets that the Liberal government had set for itself. This is not the new target of 40% plus, but rather the 30% target. The fact of the matter is that you cannot continue to build new pipelines like TMX, support other pipeline projects like Coastal GasLink, green light project after project for new oil and gas exploration, continue to support fracking of gas in this country, and continue to support the fossil fuel industry to the tune of billions of dollars, and hope to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so we've called it smoke and mirrors before, and it is. If the Liberals are serious about climate action, we are ready to work with them. But I'll tell the people of Canada that if you want a real plan, one that is going to grow our economy, that is going to put us at the front of the competitive green economy of the future, help us to join the green rush, then the only option in this election for you is the Liberals. And you can count on us to work cooperatively and collaboratively with every party on that. But right now, we're the only ones with a plan that will make a difference and that will help us limit our greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. David, you have a follow-up?
Yes, so this is on a completely different topic. Last night's debate, you had your all candidates debate last night in Toronto Centre. So I'm wondering how you think you did. What are your thoughts about not being included in tonight's debate, the TVA debate? And sorry, I'm packing a lot in here. And what opportunity, you will be in next week's debate. What opportunity do you think being on the national stage will provide for you to get your message out in a campaign that hasn't gotten a lot of media coverage?
Oh, well, first, I'll push back on that. I mean, I'm grateful to and see the cameras here every day. When your cousin calls you up and says, "Hey, I saw you on TV in the dentist's office," and another cousin calls you up and says, "Hey, I saw you in the elevator in my building," then you have to feel satisfied. And I'm grateful for the coverage that we've received. In terms of last night, I should ask you how I did. I did the debate. It was a pleasure to be part of it. I appreciated the opportunity to speak with particularly our young people and our students here in Toronto Centre, to offer them the opportunity for real representation here in a community that desperately needs it and has not had it for a long time. I'm disappointed not to be included in the TVA debate. That's their prerogative. In terms of the debate next week, I think that, as always, if it is done well and if it is done with respect, and if we can try to demonstrate that we are there to provide an opportunity for people in Canada to learn about their options, then we will have a debate that is edifying. We will have a debate that gives people the opportunity to get to know us better. And David, I'm very excited about that, because I believe that the more people in Canada get to know the Greens and our policies, particularly on the climate at this time, but also our progressive social policies, the more they'll understand that every Green that gets elected is a hard worker, a champion for their community, and someone that will show up every day ready to work with Parliament and with the other parties to get people in Canada the help that they need and real climate action.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. Thank you, David. Janet Silva from iPolitics would like to ask a question. Go ahead, Janet. One question, one follow-up, please.
Hello, Janet.
Hi. Thank you, Ms. May, for taking our questions. We're hearing that you will be heading east to the Maritimes. It's the only area outside of the Toronto core at this point that we're hearing that you're going to. When do you plan to go, and what will your message be?
Well, I'm heading to Quebec for the debates, so that one you can definitely put in the books. And certainly, as I've said, that even though I'm spending the bulk of the campaign here in Toronto, I'm looking for any opportunities that I can to support our candidates elsewhere. We have extraordinary candidates running for us in New Brunswick. We have extraordinary candidates running for us in other Atlantic provinces. We're certainly looking keenly at what's happening in Malpeque, and we're looking very keenly at what's happening in Fredericton. We'd love those to be Green seats so that those communities can be represented by strong Green MPs. So we'll definitely keep you posted. We're considering all of the options, and there's still, again, a significant amount of the campaign left. And frankly, again, people are focused on other things right now. If I'm going to travel judiciously without a big carbon footprint, then it's something that makes sense to do a little bit later on. And so that's what we're looking at.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Janet?
Yes, I do, and it's a slightly different topic. You're today speaking about Afghanistan. It's not the first time you've talked about Afghanistan in this campaign. Meanwhile, the Green Party in British Columbia, the Green Party of Canada in British Columbia, today has put out a press release, and they're talking about Code Red, given the number of climate issues that are facing Canada and the world, particularly today where you've got flooding in New York, hurricane in New Orleans. I'm wondering why that wouldn't be your message today to highlight the emergency Code Red coming out of your party from British Columbia?
Well, first, the Green Party of British Columbia, as all provincial parties are different parties. There are cousins, but unlike the NDP and the other parties, they're separate. And so their messaging, of course, we support it. And I'm so happy to hear that they're talking about Code Red today. Look, every day is a day for me to talk about the climate. When I talk about foreign policy, first, I will continue to talk about Afghanistan. I will never accept that people in Canada want to see anyone who is representing them and speaking on their behalf turning their back and abandoning other Canadians and those who helped us in their greatest hour of need. I will always talk about it. I have no regrets. I notice that the other parties are not talking about it, and that is extremely troubling for me. As I said, if Canada wants to be a global leader on issues like the climate, then we have to earn it. We have to fulfill our commitments. We have never hit one of our targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We continue to be one of the worst emitters per capita amongst wealthy nations. We continue to bring new fossil fuel projects online. And so this is all about the climate. This is all about an international issue, a global challenge that needs global solutions and global cooperation. If we have a government in Canada that is not demonstrating that it is a fair dealer and that it is ready to do its fair share globally on the climate, then we will never succeed, even if we do everything that we have promised to do. And so please remember that everything is interconnected. Canada's international reputation has a direct impact on whether Canada can fulfill its greenhouse promises and whether we can have a livable planet.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. Thank you, Janet. Are there any other questions online? Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions, s'il vous plaît, sur Zoom? Vous pouvez utiliser la fonction lever la main si vous avez une question. You can use the raised hand.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have a very special evening. We have 4 candidates from British Columbia, from the Central Okanagan and the Kootenays joining us today, as well as NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. So I know a lot of you are very, very excited to hear from our candidates and from our NDP leader. And I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us. And I'm really grateful that we get to have this opportunity directly to hear from you about what questions you have for our candidates and for our leader. And so I just want to start off by just acknowledging that a lot of people, I'm sure, that are joining us today have been impacted greatly by the wildfires this summer, but also now we know that they've been impacting our communities. And I know that it's been a really hard time for people, and I just want to acknowledge that before we get started. And so the first person I would like to introduce today is Grand Chief Philip. If you could please start us off. Hi, Grand Chief. I'm not sure. It appears to me that you might be...
Thank you. Why, he's not seal as squeeze asiu. Greetings to. Hello?
Hello?
We can hear you now. My apologies.
Okay.
Okay. Why, he's not seal? Greetings and relatives. Greetings to my privilege and a pleasure, Seal territory here in the Okanagan. Without question, we have one of the most critical the very future of our grandchildren hangs in the balance of the outcome of this election. I'm so inspired and happy that so many decent candidates have allowed their names to stand. Candidates who know and understand the importance of the crisis, the climate crisis, pandemic, epidemic, the everything that afflicts our country, racism, the absolute unraveling of the social fabric across this country. And we know in our hearts that the Liberals and the Conservatives do not have the answers. They don't even understand the questions. And their only concern is to continue to exploit the land and the resources for profit for corporations that are not even resident in this country. So Joan and I have been blessed with 15 of the most beautiful grandchildren in the universe. And everything we do is in an effort to make a better future for them and their children. And we know that you are all committed to the same. And we know that the status quo is killing our people. The policies of the Liberals and the Conservatives are greatly bringing great harm to this great nation. And we absolutely know that Jagmeet Singh has the right set of values. He has a good heart, and he speaks to the truth. And that is resonating with the people across this country. He's a very sincere, serious, and caring individual. And that's the type of leadership we need in Ottawa. But he also needs a very strong support team. And I'm praying that Joan makes it into the House, because I think her voice will help make the difference that we all strive for in this election. So with that, I wish you all well. A little PS here. I strongly support Nikki Ashton in northern Manitoba, and I thought that was very classless what the chief said in the presence of our beloved leader Jagmeet Singh the other day. It really deeply angered me. But onward and upward, we have a very important campaign in front of us. And again, blessings to you all. May the Creator clear your path and strengthen your voice as you carry our important message forward to the general public. Why? Lim Lim.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very, very much, Grand Chief Philip. Those were very poignant remarks, and it's always, I really appreciated the blessing that you put on this evening. And that is, I believe, the reason why all of us are here is because we want to change the future. So I really appreciated you just setting the stage for that this evening. Before we get to all of the candidates and the leader tonight, I just wanted to do a little shout out to Cade Descharlet. He is the candidate for Kelowna Lake Country, and he is also joining us tonight as a member of the audience. I believe he's one of the youngest members running, and so it's absolutely fantastic to have you here with us tonight. Thank you so much, Cade. Now, next up, I would like to introduce you to Richard Cannings. He has been an MP for 2 terms, and he would like to be your MP again for his 3rd term. And Richard Cannings is looking to represent, again, the riding of the South Okanagan West Kootenays. Welcome, Richard.
Well, thank you, Brittany. And yes, it's wonderful to come to you again from the beautiful riding of South Okanagan West Kootenay. I know Wayne and I always had remarks about which of us had the most beautiful riding in the country. But, I like to think it is here. And I'm speaking to you right now from Fife, the beautiful downtown Fife, a little community above Christina Lake, right in the center of that beautiful riding. This is I'm in the home of the ancestral home of my wife's mother's family, the Mazakis, and it's my home away from home in Boundary Country when I'm on the road, and we're on a bit of a road trip to get over to the Kootenays to talk to people there. The campaign has been going very well, very friendly reception everywhere. And I'd like to just thank Grand Chief Stewart Philip for his remarks about, especially about the anxiety people feel right now and across the southern interior about the fires, the intense heat we've had this summer. I got into politics to be that, to be a voice of science, of reason when it comes to climate change. I wasn't seeing that in the Harper years, of course, and it is so important that we carry that voice of science and action. We need bold action on climate change in Ottawa right now. I know Stuart and Joan live just above me on the west side of Penticton, and we've been looking at a fire on the mountain above our homes for the past few days. I've had all my valuables packed away in the car, ready to go. And so many people in this area have felt, that anxiety, that fear all through the summer. And we really have to have people in Ottawa who can speak the truth about the situation we're in. And I'm so glad to be part of the NDP team with Jagmeet and all these other wonderful candidates so that we can do that very, very important work in Ottawa. So it's great to be here, and I'm really happy to be part of Jagmeet's team. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. I couldn't agree with you more that, after this summer, it's so clear that we need really strong action on climate change, and it's great to know that the NDP has been and is ready to continue to step up for us. Next, I would like to introduce Joan Phillip, and Joan is looking to represent the Central Okanagan Similkameen Nicola. Thank you so much for joining us today, Joan.
East West Aimson. I'm one of the reasons I ran, of course, was because of I know that the New Democratic Party is both committed to bold action with respect to the climate change and be committed to recommend.
Joan, I'm not sure if it's on just on my end, but I'm having problems hearing you. I'm wondering if we can.
The Liberals and Kinder Morgan pipeline assist with Conservatives' Northern Gateway pipeline, which is, again, not going to help the environment. Will not be more detrimental to the environment. With respect to
Joan, I'm so sorry. I apologize.
We've had 9 Liberals have done nothing. And the Conservative government, and she said that she was.
Okay, thank you, Joan. I'm really sorry. It appears that we're having a problem with the internet connection. And so we'll have to move on, but the snippets that I was able to hear, I really appreciated all of your passion and where you come from. And I really hope that we see you as an MP representing us here in British Columbia, of course, but on the federal level, we see you in Ottawa. So thanks again so much, Joan. And next, I would like to move to Wayne Stetsky. Wayne has served 1 term as an MP, and he is seeking to serve as his 2nd term. And he's going to be representing, hopefully, Kootenay, Columbia. Thank you so much for joining us today, Wayne.
Thank you, Brittany, and it is really an honor to be here and to be part of Jagmeet's team. There's a good reason, Jagmeet, that you were ranked #1 in terms of leader trustworthiness by Canadians. So it's an honor to be back with you. You know, I've spent my life devoted to serving people and to serving the environment. And I really, really want to return to Ottawa to continue to both serve the constituents here in Kootenay, Columbia, and to work on the many, many issues facing us, of which #1, of course, is climate change. This riding will either go Conservative or it will go NDP. And so I am appealing to progressive voters from every party, whether it's a Liberal or a Conservative or a Green. I'm looking for your vote in this election. It was such an honor to serve you from 2015 to 2019, and I'm very much looking forward to serving you again.
Thank you so much, Wayne, and we look forward to having you serve us again. I had fun with Wayne just last week. We were out door knocking, and because we weren't able to door knock during my election, it was great to learn the ropes from someone like Wayne, who has just so much wisdom and experience. So thanks again, Wayne. And next up, I would like to welcome Bill Sandhu. Bill actually ran in 2015, and this is his time now to become our MP. And Bill is running for Kamloops Thompson Caribou. Welcome today, Bill Sandhu. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Brittany, and welcome everybody for joining us this evening. It's my honor to welcome you as I sit here on the traditional and unceded territory of Tecumseh to Secwepemc, and more widely in Kamloops Thompson in Secwepemc Ulu. I'm also very proud to say that Jagmeet Singh is the only federal leader to visit Kamloops and pay his respects at the Kamloops Residential School. We had a very powerful and emotional visit at the school, and it was very impressive because there was a clear, sincere acknowledgement, a firm acknowledgement of the courageous positions our leader Jagmeet Singh has taken throughout his leadership of our party on matters of truth, reconciliation, and justice. And this is a firm part of our commitment as we embark on this historic election. As the Grand Chief has said, I believe this will be an election in which the decisions we make will be with us for decades. Our economy, our environment, our healthcare, the sense of what kind of country we're going to be in regard to social justice, and also the strength of our democracy. I'd like to say, just like Wayne did, that this is a very tight race here between us and the Conservatives. We have them on the run. Our message of hope, fairness, affordability, and our shared humanity is resonating. This is going to be a change election, and we're showing voters why every day we're the right choice. I'd like to thank my volunteers. You're the best. And I invite others to join us, and you can do so by visiting my website. Come and join us. It's a lot of fun, and that's at billsundu.ndp.ca. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bill, for your wisdom. And of course, volunteers, that's what is needed in every campaign. And so if you haven't already signed up with your local, for your local MP to get them elected, please sign up. And again, of course, everyone's always looking for donations. No one told me to say that. I just wanted to put that in there because as you're campaigning, that's something that is always needed. And next, I am just absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity to get to introduce the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh. He is a courageous, inspiring person, and I can't imagine someone better to be our Prime Minister. So it is a tremendous honor for me to be able to introduce Jagmeet Singh for you tonight. Thank you so much, Jagmeet, for joining us.
Brittany, thank you so much. For folks listening at home, can I just get you all to break out your twinkle hands and give Brittany, our host, a big applause? She is amazing. Thank you so much, Brittany. You've been a great host, and you are an awesome new MLA to the team. And I look forward to working with you and spending some time out in your riding. And a big shout out to all of our amazing candidates. You heard from them. These are folks that care deeply about their communities. They bring so much experience and wisdom and a desire to fight for you and your families to make life better. So thank you to each and every one of you. I want you to know I'm coming to you today I'm in Montreal, so the traditional territories of the Kanestage, the Mohawk people. And as we acknowledge the traditional territories, it's also important for us to remember the injustice that the First People of this land have faced, and also our commitment to fight for justice, to fight for that true reconciliation with action, not just with words. And I want to open up. I know that we're going to have some questions. I'm looking forward to those questions. I just want you to know that in this pandemic, when things were really tough, New Democrats were there for you. We fought to get you more help, fought to keep small businesses open, and we fought to help people who were feeling the struggles of this pandemic. We were there for you to get more help to more people. And we know that in the recovery, people are going to need New Democrats to fight for them. So we want to encourage everybody, wherever you are, when you vote for New Democrat, you get someone who's fighting for you, someone who's going to lift you up, someone who's going to make you the priority. And we've seen that Justin Trudeau hasn't done that. He hasn't made people a priority, and a lot of the struggles that we're faced with have only gotten worse over this time. A lot of folks in the interior have been really struggling with the ravages of the climate crisis, particularly with forest fires. And folks have mentioned the fear and the worry. Speaking to people in the interior, I know how scary it is to have these forest fires that are ravaging communities. An entire community of Lytton was wiped out. I remember meeting kids who were worried that this was going to be the normal, that they're just going to, every summer, fluctuate between smoke-filled air or the winter, and there's not going to be a day where they could breathe freely. These are real worries that people have. And I know that things haven't gotten better. With 6 years of Justin Trudeau being the Prime Minister, we've missed every single target. Emissions have gone up. He has the worst record of all G7 leaders, and we can change this. We have so many opportunities. We can, with the technology that we have, with the resources that we have, we can invest in renewable energy. We can invest in retrofitting buildings and homes to reduce emissions. We can invest in clean transportation, electrifying public transport. We can do so much. There are so many opportunities. I'm really excited about those opportunities. It's a scary time and people are worried, but we can keep hope in our hearts. If we make the right decisions, we can fight this climate crisis and we can turn back the tide. But it's going to take real leadership and real commitment and courage. And that's what you get when you get New Democrats. I also want to take a moment to reflect on, Bill Sandhu mentioned Kamloops visiting where the first 215 children were found in unmarked graves really hit home for me, but I think it shook a lot of Canadians. The Indigenous communities knew about this for a long time, and a lot of people knew that residential institutions were horrible, but the discovery of these children really drove home how horrible. And what happened when people started holding memorials across the country, it was a moment where Canadians started to demand real action. And I think there's a powerful desire out there for us to do more and to walk the true path of reconciliation. And so that's something you can count on for New Democrats. We are going to make sure that we bring every child home, that we ensure that every community has clean drinking water. There is no excuse in a country as wealthy as ours that every single community doesn't have clean drinking water. We're going to make sure we implement all of the Truth and Reconciliation's calls to action, and we are truly going to make sure that the first people of this land have respect, dignity, and justice. So thank you so much again for being here. Thank you to the candidates. Thank you to Brittany. And thank you to all of you who are attending. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions, and I'm going to pass the mic back over to Brittany, and I look forward to hearing from you all, your questions, your thoughts. And as was mentioned, if you believe in what we're doing, please don't hesitate to sign up, to volunteer, to donate, to get involved. Thank you so much. You're all amazing. Back to you, Brittany.
Thank you, Jagmeet. You're always inspiring, and we're so fortunate to be able to have you join us today. So I just wanted to say how appreciative I am, and I know I'm sure I speak on everyone's behalf when we just say thank you. And so before we go into the Q&A portion, I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows how to be able to participate. So there is a chat function on Zoom, and you're going to be able to type your question, and you're going to direct message your question to Q&A, and then they're going to receive the questions. We're going to try to hit as many questions as we can. We want to try to get a diversity of questions. So we're talking about all different topics. But please, if you have a question, submit it in the chat, and we are going to do our best to get to as many questions as possible. And I just want to remind everyone that this is a space that we want to be respectful and kind. And so we'll get started. We have our first question. So Sandra is going to be joining us. And Sandra, you have a question about affordable housing and mental health. And I just want to say thank you so much, Sandra, for also having your camera on and your orange shirt. It's lovely to see. Thank you for joining us. And Sandra, what is your question? Oh, sorry, Sandra, you're still muted. I'm just going to see if the host can unmute Sandra, please. Oh, Sandra, I'll let you know. Oh, you got it, Sandra.
I got it. Good. Well, thank you very much for having me. And my question tonight is, across Canada, there is a lack of affordable, appropriate, and safe housing for too many people and families. And if you're living with a brain illness like schizophrenia, this is just one of many barriers and obstacles you might be facing. And I just would like you to comment on how you feel about this complex issue. And thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Sandra. Thanks for the question. I see you there with a wonderful shirt on, and thanks for waving right back at you. And the housing, I want to call it a crisis. I just don't want to overuse the word, but it truly is a crisis. When we look at what's going on around Canada, you're not alone. I hear from people everywhere that they cannot find a place to live. And it's an issue that's impacting people from all walks of life. People are facing barriers because they can't find something that's in their budget. They look, and some people are worried because they're losing their current housing and they can't find another place to go. People are being rent-evicted. It is really a big problem. And what we've seen over the past number of years, it's only gotten worse. It's only gotten worse. It's only harder and harder every year. And sadly, since Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister in 2015, just one example of how bad it's gotten, the national average price for a home has gone up by $300,000. So things are definitely getting more unaffordable. And I know some people can't even imagine ever owning a place. They're just looking to find a place that's in their budget to rent, and they can't find that either. So I want you to know we are going to tackle this. This is such an important problem for me that I want to solve it. I want to fix it. I know that there are pressures that are driving up the cost of housing, so we want to tackle those. And we also want to build and invest in 500,000 new affordable homes And this is a wide range of housing, from assisted living to supported living to cooperatives and not-for-profit housing. We really want to build homes that are within people's budgets, that give them a place, that they feel safe and secure. We know we can do this. It's just going to take making this a priority, putting a lot of resources behind it. And we've got a plan to do it, and we're committed to making it happen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jagmeet, and thank you, Sandra, for the question that I'm sure so many of us are thinking the exact same thing tonight. Before we move to the next question, it will be Reese, but I just want to remind everyone that if they would like to, just submit a question in the chat below to Q&A, and we're going to try to hit as many questions as possible. All right, Reese, you are up next, and you have a question about negativity and racism in the campaign. Thank you for that, Reese.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Hey, Reese.
I can.
Hi.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you. We're almost halfway through this election campaign. We've seen a rise in negativity and racism, especially here in our candidate, Bill Sandhu. There's this huge anti-vax rally that was going on at our hospital today, and the rise of hate and fear is really concerning. How do we, as a society, counter this?
Reese, I really appreciate the question. And I am also worried like you. I've seen some of these rallies. Let's put a couple things on the side. If people want to protest and raise their concerns, they should be able to, and we support that. And we support people having different opinions. That's absolutely allowed, and in fact, it should be encouraged. But what we're seeing, like you mentioned, Reese, is that it's not just people having a different opinion, but we're seeing a lot of racism in some of these rallies, or some of these people coming together. They're putting out misogynistic messages, violent messages, and that's just not welcome. Not only is it not welcome, it's wrong and it should not be happening. People can be very passionate, they can raise their concerns, but violence and racism and misogyny have no place in our society, and so we've got to be really clear on that. And so what I think, a couple of things we need to do. One, we know that one of the root causes of a lot of hatred that we're seeing when people are being radicalized with hatred, a lot of that's coming from online hate. And a lot of that is misinformation that's spread, and it's used to radicalize people. And we've seen it in some of the worst massacres that have been caused by or have been motivated by hate. We've learned that the folks that were the attackers or the perpetrators were radicalized by online hate. So that's one thing we got to tackle. We've got to use every resource we can to get at online hate, to make sure that misinformation is immediately removed and not allowed to spread. We also know that there's hate groups out there that are acting purposely with that goal of dividing people and spreading information that's designed to inspire and to create hate. And so a lot of these groups are extreme right-wing groups, are white supremacist groups, and we've been calling on the dismantling of these type of groups. And we started by pushing to have the Proud Boys banned, and groups like that need to be dismantled and not have a space to take hold. And finally, I think we need to really look at anytime there's a hate crime, it should be prosecuted as a hate crime. There is a particular denunciation, like we want to denounce, particularly when a crime is committed because of hate. And I know Bill is an awesome candidate, and he's super resilient. He's shown his story is a story of resilience, and he'll be all right. But it shouldn't be that people have to be so resilient and thick-skinned to be able to put themselves out. We want to encourage everyone to participate. We want women to participate. And we know that the misogyny and the already existing violence against women are just additional barriers that will discourage women from coming forward. So I think it's all of our responsibilities to make sure there's a safe space for women, for racialized people, for vulnerable people to get involved, to be able to put their name out. People should feel safe, and we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that happens. But I really appreciate the question, Reese, and you can count on us to make sure we do everything we can to fight it.
Thank you so much, Reese, for your question, and Jagmeet, of course, for your very compelling answer. And next up, we have Melissa. And Melissa has a question about COVID-19 and the disproportionate effects on different groups of people. Welcome, Melissa. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. And hello, Jagmeet and everyone. It is great to be with you. My name is Melissa Garcia, and I work with CARE Canada, an international organization working in development and humanitarian response globally, with offices located on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, known as Ottawa. As Brittany mentioned, of course, COVID has affected everyone, but not equally so, and very disproportionate impacts on women and girls, especially from marginalized and racialized communities, which threatens progress in the global recovery, which is so critical for Canada. Impacts are in health, with women being over 70% of the health workforce in Canada and globally, on safety, with women and girls facing increased levels of violence, misogyny, as you just mentioned, of levels of hunger, and livelihoods with unpaid care work and loss of work. And yet women are underrepresented in leadership, often unpaid, and their organizations on the front lines are underfunded, including for the climate crisis globally. And this makes the importance of women's leadership so critical for a just and equitable recovery. So my question for you is, given that a recovery will depend on women leading in their communities in Canada and around the world, what will you do to invest in women's leadership for the recovery?
Wow, that's, first of all, an incredibly compelling question, and you've really laid out the case. So just, I want to acknowledge that in a short question, you've laid out really the challenge that we're up against. That COVID-19, in a lot of ways, we talk about how it impacted all of us, but it has impacted people differently. And women have been amongst the hardest hit by the pandemic. And you're absolutely right to acknowledge that. And it's a part of, when I think about a recovery, I have to think about a recovery in terms of who's been hardest hit and who needs the most support in getting out of this pandemic and moving into recovery. And so we've got to keep that lens. Who's been hardest hit? We know racialized people, marginalized people, and women have been hardest hit. So they have to be very central in our plan around the recovery. So that lens, I think, is really important. And then specifically for women leadership, one of the most important tools we know to bring equity back and to bring support for women, one specific program is, of course, childcare. Early childhood education is an incredibly important tool to address the disproportionate impact on women, particularly in the workplace, and being able to have the time to be involved in leadership. The more we invest in childcare, the more it'll support women. I think that's key. I also think that we've got to actively and proactively create space for women. If women have been excluded and pushed out proactively from spaces of power, we also have to then respond to that, not just by saying, okay, we should encourage women and just kind of be a little bit laissez-faire or sit back and just say, okay, women should get involved. I think it requires really being proactive. So one of the things I've done as a leader is make sure that we are very actively recruiting women to be candidates, to be leaders. We've got a policy around making sure incumbent ridings are ridings where we won before have to be filled with candidates that come from diverse backgrounds or equity-seeking backgrounds. So that's just a policy that I think specifically helps us achieve that. There's a lot that we need to do, and so you've touched on a broad topic. Those are just some of the commitments amongst many others that we have to do to address this the way you've laid out. We've got to respond to the people who've been the most impacted with a recovery that responds to those folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That was a very well thought out question and a very well thought out answer. An answer also that came from the heart. So I really, really appreciated that. Next up, we have Jason, and Jason has a question regarding reconciliation. Welcome, Jason. The floor is yours. You're going to need to unmute yourself. Perfect. There you go.
Hello, Jagmeet. I wanted to first of all say that I'm one of those sad people who missed your visit to Kamloops.
Oh, that's okay.
I teach at the local university. Many years ago, I actually had a deep relationship with the Indian resident offices because they would buy a lot of office equipment from me when I was in sales. And I remember the feeling when I was in that building. I can't even imagine, because I couldn't gird myself to actually go and visit the residential school at the time. And the reason I'm saying this is that the university where I teach right now has been deeply affected by the news and by the revelations of dead children. I teach in the Faculty of Arts, and there were people who were openly weeping during our meeting. It's a very, very highly emotional topic to get involved in. And I apologize, I am wearing blue, but I actually have an original orange shirt from the Red Dirt shirts back in the States. But anyway, the point that I'm driving at is because I'm involved in education, I wanted to hear your thoughts on what it meant for a deeper sense, and I want to go a level further than what most leaders have spoken about, of reconciliation in conjunction with education. The reason I asked this question is I was born in 1964. You can all do the math now. And the fact of the matter is that the history books that I was raised with still used words like savages. It still used phrases such as settling and expanding culture rather than seeing culture for where it was. And the education right now, to me, is still sadly lacking. And I wonder, is there a role? I know that primarily it's a provincial issue. I understand that. But there are positions that the federal government has that could be taking part of that. And where do you see it shaping? I know it's not necessarily part of your platform, but I also know you're a thinking and intellectual man from what I've seen from your presentations. I also know you're a practical man as being a Sikh, because I'm one of those weirdos who actually knows what the dagger represents. It actually represents the separation of truth from lies, and I understand that. So I wanted to position that to you. I realize I kind of rambled. It's almost the most anti-academic question you're going to get, but I think you got it. Yes. And to see you smile, I just wanted to thank you so much for the honor of speaking directly to you.
Thank you so much, Jason. I wish we could do this in person, but moments when we can connect, I feel like there is something that can be said about having these Zoom meetings that would bring us, that otherwise I'm here in Montreal and I wouldn't be able to meet you in person, but I'm glad that we can connect this way. Thanks for the question. And as you were asking the question, I was thinking about what we could do. I can tell you, I just wanted to share this, that you mentioned it was hard for you to go to the actual site. I could say for some reason I know why, but it was really incredibly difficult for me when I was standing and speaking with some media, and I had the residential institution behind me, and I kept on looking back, and I would get choked up just thinking, this is where it all happened. In this building behind me, this is where kids were stripped of their identity, their language, their sense of self, and their lives. And I was just thinking, and there was a survivor who'd gone to the residential school, and she told me, yeah, I went to that school, the girls were on this side, the boys were on that side, and it was just so heartbreaking. And I think, Canadians are good people. Like if folks really knew what happened to Indigenous people, if they really felt what Canada had done and continues to do, all Canadians would agree that we've got a responsibility. Like it's not just a question of should we or should we not. We've got a moral responsibility to set things right. We can never take back the heinous acts that have been perpetrated against Indigenous people, but we can certainly do something about it now. We can stop them from going on any further, and we can certainly do something for justice. And a part of that is for people to know what really happened. There should be no debate about how heinous the residential institutions were, and people should know that this was colonialism. It wasn't people that came in and explored and discovered. There were communities here, there were civilizations here, there were teachings and there were families, and there was community, and there was language, and there was governance, and there was technology, and there was science, there was culture here. To your point, there wasn't that culture was expanded here. There were already people here. And I believe if we did a better job of teaching folks, people would all appreciate that we've got to do something then to set things right. And so I think there is a role that we could play at the federal level. Of course, education is still a jurisdiction provincially, but I'm sure there's a way for us to gather some of the best practices, some of the best ways of sharing knowledge, and some of the most important things for people to know, and kind of build what a national framework around what should we expect that we learn as kids growing up, and what should we learn about Canada's great achievements, but also some of the really horrible things that we've been a part of. As a part of us becoming a better nation, I feel like we could grow and be better if we reflected on this. And so, yeah, I think there's a role that we can play. And just to give you some I don't know, sense of solidarity, I've actually received not the same eloquent way you put it, but I've had other people raise questions about what we could do federally to create a national framework around education and what people should know, and particularly about the injustice against Indigenous people. So yeah, I think you're not alone. I think people definitely want to do something about this, and I think we can. Yeah, and thank you for the shout out about knowing about the Kirpan and some of the Sikh traditions. That was cool. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks so much, Jason, and thank you, Jagmeet. I just want to remind people, I've seen some people, I've seen them raise their hands. We just are asking people if they have a question to please use the chat function, send a message directly to Q&A, and they will put you in the queue. So thank you so much, everyone who has been asking questions so far. Next up, we have Graham, and Graham has a question regarding the opioid crisis.
Good evening. We have so many problems. I'm glad that Richard and Jagmeet and others have emphasized things like climate change, things like racism, inequalities of all kinds, homelessness. I learned today that more people have died of opiate overdoses in British Columbia than are dying of COVID-19. And it's not just a BC problem. It's not just a Vancouver problem. It's a national problem. Even in Penticton, where I now live, we have overdose deaths, which are surely preventable. What is the policy of the NDP towards this, I think, often overlooked crisis? And I'm not saying that it's the major one. There are so many things that are dramatic and major, but this is one that is surely preventable, but I'm not sure what the steps are that we're going to take to prevent particularly young people from dying of drug overdoses. Mm-hmm. It seems to me very, very serious, and it's compounded, of course, very often with other kinds of things like poverty and homelessness. There's an issue which I think that has been sidestepped just a little. So if there's some comments that you could make on how to deal with this terrible crisis is affecting even the little town Penticton where I live, I would be very, very grateful to have a sense of going forward.
Thank you so much, Graham. I really appreciate the question. And hi to you. And I see another person on the screen beside you there. Hi to you both. I just want to say you're absolutely right that while we've been dealing with the COVID-19 crisis unfold, the global pandemic, it hasn't meant that the other crises have gone away. And we've seen really sobering and really disturbing news about the impacts of the opioid crisis, that crisis has not gone away and in fact has gotten worse. So I hear you when you talk about that. It's absolutely true, and it's really heartbreaking. And one of the things that we've learned, seeing the toll, the loss of life, how many people are dying to the opioid crisis, one of the things that's emerging really clearly is that the previous approach that we've taken has not worked. It's not working. People are getting are getting addicted, are using substances that end up drug overdoses and are losing their lives. And the approach that's been taken for so long has not worked. So we can't continue to do the same thing hoping for a different outcome. We can't take the same approach. And so I can speak to you as a lawyer. I represented clients that were arrested and charged with personal possession when they had possession of a controlled substance. And these are folks, that I represented, I met with, and they were not best served by the criminal justice system. These are folks that were dealing with mental health or addiction or poverty. They did not need a criminal justice solution. They needed a healthcare solution. And so what I'm advocating for is let's take a different approach. Let us stop putting people that need help through the criminal justice system. That is not a solution. Let's instead respond with care and compassion. And as the evidence suggests, there are better ways for us to care for people, to help them out, to save their lives, but also to make our community safer. So let's respond with care and compassion and healthcare instead of criminal justice to help people that are going through this. And let's be open to the evidence. If there's a good argument and there's evidence-based reasons for a certain approach, let's be open to that approach if it's going to save lives and keep our community safer. So I really hear you on the question, and I believe we can take a different approach, and that's what we're advocating in our platform. Thanks so much, Graham. And Brittany, before we get to, I wanted to mention something in an earlier question around. I feel like I was trying to fit a time to mention it around the climate crisis, and I wasn't able to respond with this. So I want folks to know, for the people particularly so impacted in the interior, for people, Bill Sandhu, I was there with you in Kamloops, and we saw how smoky the air was and how people were really worried about this. They were distressed, and there was this constant fear, will the fire spread towards Kamloops or not? For Richard in Penticton and seeing the recent images of the fire getting really close to the city, getting close to the airport, and that's where actually a lot of the helicopter training happens for folks that are involved in trying to put out the fires. And for folks that are, communities that have been destroyed like Lytton, and communities that are at constant risk of evacuation, I want to propose a solution. We know that a lot of communities could become more resilient to the realities of the climate crisis if there was a fund available to invest in some of the proactive solutions to mitigate some of the disaster. So what we're proposing and what's in our plan, something we want to announce today, is that a new Democrat government would provide a $3 billion disaster mitigation fund. This fund would allow communities to be able to make investments in proactive solutions so they're not as vulnerable to extreme weather circumstances. This would allow communities that could put in place some protections against potential flooding or forest fires. There are steps that communities can take that can make them more resilient and less susceptible to extreme weather circumstances and less susceptible to things like forest fires. And putting in those steps, that proactive infrastructure that would prevent some of the worst from happening, I think makes a lot of sense. And that's why we're announcing that a new Democrat government would allow for municipalities to access up to $3 billion or a fund of $3 billion so that communities can access this fund and to be able to make investments in their communities to make them more resilient. And that's something I think would help a lot of people.
Thank you so much, Jagmeet. I think that is absolutely critical, and I know that a lot of people will be so grateful to hear it. That is a very, very welcome announcement. Thank you for announcing that here tonight with us. Next up, we have Susan, and Susan has a question regarding old growth. Hello, Susan. Please take it away. And lovely orange shirt.
Well, thank you. Yes, I want to congratulate you on becoming a parent soon.
Thank you.
It speaks volumes about your optimism for the future. I'm sure that you and Gurkhan have concerns about the uncertainty of the world that young people face today. They're looking for leadership that will address their existential crisis. But they want to know where you stand when it comes to the conflict over old growth forest. I understand that you were out at Fairy Creek this past summer and experienced the love and respect that people have there for Mother Earth and for the last 10 of productive forests that they're fighting for. They're putting their lives on the line for us. for all of us, for our children, our grandchildren. Those mother trees have become a symbol worldwide of the colonial, unsustainable extractive practices that have caused so much damage to the planet. They're being violently assaulted by the RCMP and those mercenaries in green suits. I understand that the forestry is a provincial jurisdiction and that there's some etiquette that's expected when it comes to provincial leaders. But the RCMP and Indigenous issues are federal concerns. When you're Prime Minister, what would you do to ensure that Indigenous people resume their traditional rights quickly and the rights and responsibilities for the land? And how would you address the escalating violence towards peaceful protesters?
Thank you so much for the question, Susan. I want to start off with the last part of your question. We've seen a really deeply disturbing trend over the past period of time where there have been more and more incidences of extreme use of force in policing. We've seen that in the States. We see that here in Canada. And we're seeing really troubling examples of violence and the overuse of aggressive tactics, and instead of de-escalation, escalating tactics that increase the tension in conflict. So we've long called for a review of the force used, overhaul of the approach when it comes to we can govern the federally regulated policing, so the RCMP, a complete overhaul of the use of force, a focus on de-escalation, and we absolutely think that the violence against the protesters was heavy-handed and absolutely inappropriate. And so we can do better. We've been calling on Justin Trudeau to overhaul the approach of the RCMP when it comes to how that should happen, how should interactions be between the RCMP and citizens and people. And there's a way to do that, and we've seen a lot of inaction on the part of Justin Trudeau to bringing in those reforms. And I believe we need to reform policing in general to make sure people aren't losing their life or being the victim of extreme violence in those circumstances. And I think that there's a lot that we can do to make sure that that's better. When it comes to old growth forests, I don't want to have it be said that I was at Fairy Creek when I was actually at Meares Island. So I was with the majesty of old growth forest, but it was in a different community. So I just wanted to correct that. But and I did see the incredible beauty of the old growth forest. That was one of the sites of one of the largest civic or civil unrest or civil movements to protect the forest on Meares Island. Indigenous communities were a big part of it, and to be able to be in the majesty of those trees was a really special opportunity. I care deeply about the environment. I care deeply about protecting, conserving our forests. And Indigenous communities are the landholders. They are the land defenders. They've got traditions and teachings and learnings about how to be stewards. And we need to support Indigenous-led conservation. So Indigenous communities have to be at the heart of any conservation. We need to do more to protect and conserve our forests. And so that's why we're proposing a $500 million fund to support Indigenous-led conservation, to help Indigenous communities preserve their land. I believe we need to have a better approach to policing, and we need to be better allies to work with Indigenous communities so they can conserve their land and conserve their forests. And that's what we're proposing to do.
Thank you so much for your question, Susan. And of course, Jagmeet, thanks for your thoughtful answer. Next up, we have
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue à cette conférence de presse de la Fédération canadienne des municipalités. La présidente de la FCN, Joanne van der Heyden, le deuxième vice-président de la FCM, Scott Pierce, le président du Forum rural de la FCM, Ray Orb, et le président du Caucus des maires des grandes villes et maire d'Halifax, Mike Savage, prendront la parole dans quelques instants. Nous vous prions de garder votre caméra fermée à tout moment et de couper le son de votre micro. La période des questions débutera après le discours d'ouverture. Vous pourrez poser une question et une question de suivi. Nous vous demandons de vous présenter lorsque vous prendrez la parole et d'indiquer à qui votre question s'adresse. Pour poser vos questions, merci d'envoyer votre nom et le nom du média pour lequel vous travaillez dans le chat commun. Nous vous donnerons la parole lorsque ce sera votre tour de poser une question. Merci. Good morning. Welcome to this Federation of Canadian Municipalities press conference. FCM President Joanne Vander Hayden, FCM Second Vice President Scott Pierce, FCM Rural Forum Chair Ray Orb, and Big City Mayor's Caucus President and Halifax Mayor Mike Savage will deliver remarks shortly. We ask that you keep your camera off at all times and that your microphones remain muted. The question period will begin after the speeches, and you will be able to ask one question and one follow-up. Please introduce yourself when you have the floor and identify to whom the question is directed. To be able to ask questions, please send your name and the name of the media you're working for in the comment chat. We will unmute you when it will be your turn to ask a question. Thank you, and over to you, Ms. Vander Hayden.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I want to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you from Treaty 21 territory. My name is Joanne Vander Hayden, President of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. FCM unites more than 2,000 cities and communities of all sizes, representing more than 90% of Canadians in every province and territory. We've all learned so much from this pandemic. We've seen COVID-19 expose some real cracks in the foundation of this incredible country. We're resolved to become more resilient to future threats, whether that's a virus or climate change. And most of all, we've seen how much we can achieve when we all work together. After everything we've been through, Canadians deserve a recovery they can see and feel in their daily lives. As the governments closest to Canadians, that is what local leaders do best. We deliver frontline solutions that make people's lives better. And we do it in ways that tackle big national challenges, from job creation to climate change to the housing crisis. So this election, FCM's message to every federal party is clear. If you want to drive a strong, inclusive, and sustainable recovery, local governments are your essential partner. After all, cities and communities are where we all live, work, start businesses, and raise our families. That's where local leaders have been protecting residents, businesses, and vital services all pandemic long. And they're where big national challenges can be addressed first, fastest, and most effectively. Today, on behalf of cities and communities, FCM is bringing forward frontline solutions for Canada's recovery. Our recommendations strengthen local resilience to protect people from extreme weather while scaling up local projects that get us closer to net zero emissions. Everything from deep building retrofits to green municipal fleets to natural infrastructure. Our recommendations include ways to end chronic homelessness and make housing more affordable for everyone. And because Canada's recovery will only succeed if it includes communities of all sizes, we're also proposing solutions to help rural and northern communities reach their full potential. Like permanently doubling the Canada Community Build Fund, which empowers every community in every region to create more jobs and improve people's quality of life. And like moving faster to finally bring reliable, high-speed internet to all Canadians. These are just some of the frontline solutions that FCM is laying out today. Our recommendations show what's possible when governments work together for Canadians. And they're rooted in one of the pandemic's most important lessons. Directly empowering local leaders strengthens Canada's front lines. Municipal leaders see what's needed on the ground and what works in our communities. We've shown this all pandemic long. Every big issue we see in this election, from creating jobs to ending chronic homelessness to reaching net zero emissions, every one of them plays out in our communities. Not only does this make them shared objectives for municipal leaders, it makes us key partners in achieving them. From coast to coast to coast, local leaders are ready to work with every federal party to drive frontline solutions for Canadians. We're ready to build an even better Canada on the other side of COVID. And now I'll turn it over to FCM's Second Vice President, Scott Pierce.
Sorry about that. Took some time to unmute. Thank you very much, Madame la Présidente. Bonjour à tous. Merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui et merci de votre intérêt. La Fédération canadienne des municipalités représente plus de 90% de la population canadienne. Et je suis fier d'unir ma voix à celle de nos 2000 municipalités membres pour dévoiler nos solutions de première ligne pour la relance. Nos recommandations électorales sont le résultat de ce qu'on a vécu pendant la pandémie. La COVID a démontré les inégalités et a montré qu'on devrait être mieux préparé pour affronter les menaces qui nous guettent. Que ce soit une pandémie ou des catastrophes naturelles qui ont des conséquences de plus en plus néfastes pour les municipalités, on a vu que la seule façon de relever ces défis, c'était de travailler tout le monde ensemble. Après tout ce qu'on a traversé, après tout ce qu'on a réussi à faire pendant la pandémie, il faut qu'on continue à travailler ensemble pour offrir une relance qui améliore la qualité de vie des gens dans nos communautés, partout au Canada. Il faut se préparer et protéger nos citoyens en s'adaptant aux catastrophes naturelles de plus en plus extrêmes et ainsi faire face aux inondations, feux de forêt et aux sécheresses. Doubler de manière permanente les investissements du Fonds pour le développement des collectivités du Canada va permettre de renforcer notre résilience face au changement climatique, d'entretenir les infrastructures publiques qui sont importantes pour notre qualité de vie et de relancer nos économies locales et nationales. Il faut renouveler nos infrastructures plus rapidement, comme nos routes, nos équipements de traitement des eaux usées, nos installations sportives et récréatives et nos bâtiments publics. On propose aussi des solutions pour d'autres enjeux stratégiques, comme l'accès à l'Internet en région, le transport en commun, les services d'autobus interrégionaux, l'accès à des logements abordables et les solutions nature pour lutter et s'adapter au changement climatique. Toutes les recommandations que l'on fait pendant la campagne électorale ont une chose en commun. Elles ont été pensées sur le terrain par et pour les gouvernements de proximité que sont les municipalités, car elles sont plus près des gens. Notre message est clair auprès de tous les partis politiques durant cette campagne électorale. Pour une relance forte, inclusive et durable, les gouvernements de proximité sont des partenaires incontournables. On connaît notre terrain, on connaît les défis des municipalités, on sait ce qui fonctionne et donne des résultats. Et cela touche autant les grandes villes que les cantons et les noyaux villageois. Ce que nous proposons va créer des emplois locaux et servir nos concitoyens. Nos propositions électorales sont des solutions concrètes pour construire des collectivités plus fortes et plus justes pour l'avenir. La dernière année n'a pas été facile. Les gens veulent voir des choses concrètes et tangibles. Ils veulent qu'on ressorte de la pandémie encore plus forte qu'avant. Tout ça, ça passe par nos villes et nos communautés. Tous les élus municipaux sont prêts à travailler avec tous les partis politiques pour atteindre notre objectif. Merci beaucoup de votre attention et votre intérêt. Maintenant, je cède la parole au président du caucus des maires des grandes villes de la FCM, le maire d'Halifax, M. Mike Savage.
Good morning.
Actually,
I think it's rain.
Actually, Scott, I'm going to take over this next section. But thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Vice President Pierce. And good morning, everyone. I'm Ray Orb, and I'm Reeve of the Rural Municipality of Cupar, Saskatchewan, and chair of FCM's Rural Forum. Across the country, Canada's rural communities play an integral role in driving our national economy. We're home to key industries like agriculture, manufacturing, and natural resources, and generate nearly 1/3 of Canada's GDP. Like our urban counterparts, rural leaders have been on the front lines of protecting people, businesses, and vital services all pandemic long. And like our urban counterparts, we're going to be essential to Canada's recovery. And you'll see this reflected throughout the recommendations FCM is bringing today. Like in our call to finally bring high-speed internet to all Canadians, while millions of people in this country have gone online for work, school, and basic human interaction, Too many rural Canadians still don't have that option. In our modern world, access to broadband means that small businesses can sell their goods online. Farmers can find real-time data, and entire communities can reach their full potential. That's why FCM is recommending concrete steps to bring fast, reliable, and affordable internet to every Canadian, no matter where they live. You'll also see the importance of rural communities in FCM's call to permanently double the Canada Community Building Fund. And doubling down on this proven tool would create good jobs and better quality of life in communities of all sizes. As rural leaders, we all know our communities best. Directly empowering rural expertise would enable us to drive smart infrastructure solutions that meet the unique needs of our residents. You'll see rural communities in FCM's climate resilience solutions as well. And the fact is, extreme weather doesn't discriminate between big city and rural communities. Smaller communities like mine need the right tools to protect people from floods, wildfires, and extreme heat. And so we're proposing ways to ensure communities of all sizes can do exactly that. Rural transportation is also a key part of FCM's transit recommendations. Getting people moving matters everywhere. Cutting commutes and emissions matters everywhere. And the loss of intercommunity bus routes that so many rural communities relied on hurts our national economy. That's why we're urging all federal parties to make rural mobility and rural transportation a priority. And as President Van der Hagen said earlier, to succeed, Canada's recovery needs to take root in communities of all sizes, from coast to coast to coast. 10 million Canadians call rural Canada home. They're entrepreneurs, farmers, engineers, small business owners, nurses, and more. They move their communities forward, and they move this country forward. As rural leaders, we're ready to work with every federal party to build a recovery that everyone can take part in. Now I'll turn it over to Halifax Mayor and Chair of FCM's Big City Mayor Caucus, Mike Savage.
Well, thank you very much, Ray and Scott, as well. Good morning, everybody. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis très heureux d'être ici avec vous, avec mes collègues. I'm Mike Savage. I'm the mayor of Halifax and chair of FCM's Big City Mayors Caucus. And I come to you from Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And the peace and friendship treaties are something that we recognize and honor. The frontline solutions that FCM is proposing today are designed to make people's lives better. They're also designed to tackle major national challenges, challenges that continue to play out in cities and communities across the country, like the housing crisis. COVID-19 has shown the depths of Canada's housing crisis, from essential workers who go home to inadequate housing, to vulnerable Canadians who have no home to go to at all. As frontline governments, local leaders bring crucial expertise to the table, and we're proposing constructive ways to end chronic homelessness and boost affordability across the housing spectrum. From scaling up the Rapid Housing Initiative to expanding affordable rental options in ways that work locally. FCM is also proposing frontline solutions to the climate crisis. Canada is warming at 2 to 3 times the global average. We're seeing the havoc that this is causing in all of our communities, like this summer's extreme heat and devastating fires. Municipal leaders are already doing important work on the ground. What's needed now is unprecedented federal investments in local resilience and disaster mitigation projects, in low carbon infrastructure like public transit and water management, and in local pathways that will get Canada to net zero emissions. So today we're sharing concrete ways that federal and municipal governments can work together to protect lives and safeguard communities. Transit. We know that continuing to expand modern transit systems is key to building livable and competitive cities, as well as to achieving Canada's climate goals. And we know that rural transportation, like intercommunity bus routes, is just as vital to economic growth. Transit systems have taken a real hit during this pandemic, and that's why we're calling for federal leadership to address the operating revenue shortfalls the transit systems continue to face. I've got to tell you, these shortfalls are blowing a hole in municipal budgets and could undermine the job-creating capital projects that will drive Canada's recovery. We're urging federal parties to lock in the permanent, predictable transit investments that cities and communities need to move forward on long-term expansions for Canadians. Now, of course, job creation and economic growth are going to be vital components of Canada's recovery. Our housing, climate, and transit solutions all generate good jobs. FCM is also proposing that the federal government permanently double the Canada Community Building Fund, formerly known as the gas tax. Simply put, this is one of the very best job-creating tools in Canada, directly empowering communities of all sizes to renew infrastructure faster would create jobs and growth for years to come. It would mean better roads to move people and goods, modern rec centers for kids and seniors, and so much more. Every one of the recommendations that we're releasing is geared to promoting a more inclusive recovery. Whether it's addressing the inadequate, overcrowded housing that's disproportionately impacting racialized Canadians, or building better transit so frontline workers can get to work safely and quickly, or renewing community infrastructure that brings people together. In today's world, we need to prioritize digital inclusion for all Canadians. Fast and reliable broadband internet is essential to our economy and to modern quality of life. The pandemic has exposed how Canada's digital divide continues to hurt rural, remote, northern, and Indigenous communities. As Ray said, FCM is recommending concrete steps to ensure that all Canadians can connect online to modern commerce, to modern opportunities, and to each other. Cities and communities of all sizes have been on the front lines of COVID-19 since day one, and will be on the forefront of Canada's recovery. The solutions that FCM is putting forward today present a clear path to a strong, inclusive, and sustainable future. They reflect our frontline expertise of what's needed on the ground and what works in our communities. This election, we're calling on every federal party to work with Canada's municipal leaders, and that is how we will drive the recovery that Canadians deserve. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. I will hand it back over to Mayor Vander Hayden and FCM staff to take your questions.
Thank you very much, Mayor Savage. It's it's great to hear you all. So to be able to ask questions, please send your name and the name of the media outlet you're working for in the comment chat. And please introduce yourself when you have the floor. Identify the person to whom the question is directed. Pour poser vos questions, amis journalistes, veuillez envoyer votre nom et le nom du média pour lequel vous travaillez dans le chat commun. Le modérateur et moi vous donnerons la parole quand ce sera votre tour de poser une question. First question is for Jordan Press, Canadian Press.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time. My question, first off, maybe Mayor Savage and President Vander Hayden, maybe the two of you can take a stab at this first, which is just about the transit funding that you're asking for to help with the operating shortfalls. I'm wondering first if you can maybe describe a bit about how big those shortfalls are across the country for some municipalities, but also maybe make the case for doing so and continuing to invest in transit, given that we may be heading into a post-pandemic world where
during COVID. And we know that it's going to take a while for people to fully come back to all the different forms of transit we need. But let's remember that transit was absolutely essential in order to get people to work, essential workers, not nurses and doctors, public health officials, but also people who worked in grocery stores and in drugstores and so many other services that had to stay open, that they could not have stayed open without transit. So we had to keep running transit, even when the revenue was down. In some cases, we didn't charge revenue during COVID. In other cases, revenue was down because there was less ridership. So there's money to be made up there, and through the restart agreement that that came from the feds and some of the provinces last year, that was helpful. But we don't know how long it's going to take to get our transit back. But it's more important than ever that we support transit, that we move to net zero ways of transit, that we have electrifications of a fleet, that we have bus rapid transit, that we have effective ways for people to move around throughout the pandemic. And also, let's not forget investments in active transportation as well. A lot of people started walking, to work or around their communities during COVID. We need to make sure that active transportation is part of that. And also, as we mentioned before, and as Ray mentioned, intercity, inter-community bus routes as well, which took a hit during COVID. So all of those things really identify the need for mass investments, both on the capital side, which we're asking for to permanent funding for transit so that we can electrify fleets or move to low carbon fleets so that we can have better transit routes for all, that we can increase the active transportation options, whether it's cycling or walking or rollerblading. All of those things are going to be more important, I think, than ever. So we're looking for immediate help on the holes that the cities have. In our case, it was $2 to $4 million a month revenue shortfall for a mid-sized city. And people have seen the numbers from Toronto and Vancouver, but also to continue the major investments so that we can modernize sustainably our transit systems.
Jordan, if you want to have a follow-up question, go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Veronique. My follow-up question is actually for Mr. Orb. Just because there is a portion in here not about engaging Western Canadian municipal leaders on place-based economic development and pathways to net zero emissions. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what that might mean in the short term and in the long term, what that might look like if the federal government actually did get involved in some of those discussions.
As far as transit, I assume that's what the question would be. Actually, Western Canadian leaders have been engaged through FCM. We've been, discussing this for a long time, and we know that we need to have inter-community bus service. That's affordable, but that is energy efficient as well, and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And there is a role as well for rail service, to be played into that. So I'm assuming that's the line of your questioning, but we have been developed through FCM, a Western Canadian Municipal Task Force that's looked at all of these things as well as a lot of other things that we could talk about a bit later.
Any other questions from media? Questions des journalistes? Ne vous gênez pas. Jordan, if you have another follow-up, go ahead.
Well, since I have everybody's attention, maybe more of a broad question for everyone, which is, we are heading into a post-pandemic world where federal finances are going to be a little tighter than they were potentially prior to the pandemic, just given all the spending that has happened. And there's a long list of requests here. And looking ahead, can you just talk about the confidence you have that some of these, or that maybe you'd have all of these that would show up in a federal budget from whoever forms government afterwards, and that they wouldn't necessarily be maybe punted down the road while the federal government gets its financial house in order?
Well, I'll start answering that one, Jordan. And I just wanted to mention that, a lot of these things are urgent. They need to happen now. These are not wishes. This is needs. So we're talking about renewing core infrastructure, building modern transit, tackling the housing crisis, protecting people from climate extremes, These truly are not just nice to have. These are essential for Canadians coast to coast to coast, regardless of who's in power at the federal level. And among governments, municipalities truly are, you've heard it from all of us, closest to the people's daily lives. We see what's needed, what works on the ground, and we're ready to work with every single federal party to deliver frontline solutions to some of Canada's biggest national challenge. It's about investing, it's about economic recovery, and generating growth. Anybody else want to speak to this? Mayor Savage?
I could, sorry.
Oh,
I could comment as well. Just on the broadband file, I think that's something that the country needs. Rural Canada needs better broadband service. Mr. Savage talked about that. Even the importance to the urban because of the connectivity issues with urban and rural. But that money, that we're asking for, to be able to be spent every year, in addition to the Universal Broadband Fund, for at least $150 million every year for the next 4 years, I think will go a long way. It's money well spent, but it's integral to the national economy to be able to get our economy moving again. And if we don't spend that money, I think we're going to be a lot worse off. And it showed up obviously during COVID that we have so many connectivity issues out in rural Canada. So that's my comment on that.
Mayor Savage?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so it's a good question. It's a natural question. Where's the money going to come from for all the things that Canada needs? We do have a deficit in Canada, financial deficit, but we also have an infrastructure deficit. We have work that needs to be done. We've seen the fires and the flooding that has happened across the country. I'm sitting in Halifax. We're getting the remnants of Hurricane Ida that swept through New Orleans and hit New York and New Jersey yesterday. And these are investments that we need to make as cities in the future of our cities. And so I think Canadians have shown they support investments in people and in infrastructure. I think that people recognize the need. We saw that during COVID, that people respond positively to governments that invest in people and invest in infrastructure. And, as municipal governments, the old story, we have 60% of the infrastructure and 10% of the taxes. And so it's not something we can do without the support of provincial and federal, both orders of government, both of the other lesser orders of government than municipalities. We all have to work together. There's a role for everybody.
Thank you. Last opportunity to ask questions, reporters. C'est votre dernière opportunité de poser des questions si vous en avez. So I think it means it's the end of the press conference. Thank you all.
Thank you for listening today, and thank you for supporting us with our sponsors. Please go to depictions.media for more information and click on our contact link and let us know how we can help bring your story and help bring us to a better world. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.